Okay, we're ready for you.
Okay. Not too long back, you released an album called The Definition of Soul.
That's correct.
Is there for you a definitive definition of soul?
Well, the album was produced by my son, Selassie.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and that's the most important thing, that it was a family production. We also had the privilege of having Jerry Wexler produce one of those songs with him. So it was a very exciting time for me, and a very wonderful time for my son, Selassie.
I think I read somewhere that you had your own radio show when you were 12 years old. Is that right?
That's correct. On WDAS in Philadelphia.
What can you tell us about that?
Well, it was a gospel show that we had called the Clara Ward Hour. And we featured Clara Ward singers because at that time that's the only records we had. Clara Ward had given us, Mother Ward had given us a lot of Clara's records, and we went on playing the Clara Ward show, and it was a great, exciting situation for me as a young man.
As far as your singing goes, did you have formal vocal training in your younger days?
Just by the grace of God, just from the church. Basically, it all started as a gift from God, and you're supposed to add on to those talents and gifts that God gives you. And this is what I've tried to do in the 4 decades of music.
Now, you began singing gospel. Was it a big decision for you to move from gospel songs to secular?
Well, we never moved to secular. We just continued on in what we were doing in our message in the representation of soul music.
Mm-hmm.
And that brought it, of course, when you sing soul, you sing what you feel. And what you feel, if you feel love, you sing love. If you feel hurt, you sing hurt. You feel pain, you sing pain. You feel happiness, you sing happiness.
You're recognised as a pioneer of soul music, and it must have been an incredibly exciting time to be part of a blossoming new music form. Did you and your contemporaries feel like you were a sense of history there? Did you feel that?
Well, it was important because at that time, the elders of my church would not allow me to be a rhythm and blues artist. So we had to come up with something that would be satisfactory to the church as well as satisfactory to the record company. And at that point, they didn't understand what soul music was, and they didn't really care. All they knew is they had a contract, and they wanted to complete that contract, and so they went along with the idea of me being a soul singer instead of a rhythm and blues artist.
Now, you mentioned Jerry Wexler earlier, and he brought you across to Atlantic, and he's a legendary music figure. How did you find him to work with in those days?
Very interesting working with Mr. Wexler. He was very talented, very exciting. Ahmet Erdogan himself and Bert Burns and a lot of people that they brought in. We had the privilege of working with Brooke Benton, and his manager Otis Blackwell, and just a lot of fantastic people were at Atlantic at that time. I was very upset because I was hoping that I would meet Ray Charles, and my arrival was part of Ray Charles's departure, so I didn't get a chance to meet Ray Charles. That was the only disappointing thing in my coming to Atlantic.
Now, actually, I've just finished reading Jerry's book, and he says in that book that you were virtually responsible for keeping Atlantic Records alive in the early 60s after they lost some other big names, including Ray Charles, as you said. Were you aware of this at the time, and did you feel a pressure upon you because of that?
No, I wasn't aware of it, but I realized that I was pumping oxygen now into the company for 3 years. But we had a lot of fun doing it, and a lot of amazing things, and a lot of lessons that were learned, and a lot of great lessons that I'm still learning, and a lot of lessons now that I'm sharing with young and new artists, and for them not to make the same mistakes that I made by being so over anxious and so excited that you fail to take care of business and do the things that you necessarily need to do to be a successful artist for the future.
Now, in that book, you also mentioned tales of your entrepreneurial skills outside of music, and some of these stories are legendary. I believe that you even at one stage had a pork chop stall outside of the Apollo Theatre.
Well, it went from chickens to pork chops, and I'm happy to know that our poultry division has expanded to the pork chop division, and it gets better and better as the stories are told, I guess, around the world.
That's not entirely true.
Well, they're true. We did a lot of fantastic things out there. We had, fried chicken and chops and hamburger and spaghetti and gravy dishes and all those things we had on the road, because at that point here in America, there weren't too many restaurants that the black artists could even eat at or buy from, and we didn't have Kentucky Fried Chickens in those days and a lot of places like that, and certainly we couldn't go into the hotels and eat and dine, and cafeterias weren't available to the black artists. So it was important for us to find a way to do things to make everybody as comfortable and as happy as possible. And all of our tours that we were on at that time, where we were either signing the tour or on the package or co-starring on the package, I made sure that all of our people and everybody with us had good food to eat, and they had a good time.
Tell us about playing at the Apollo. It's a place we hear so much about down here. It must have been an exciting time too.
The Apollo Theater was one of the first theaters that I performed in. And I remember performing my first time at the age of 15 years old, and I was only allowed to perform on the weekends. And that was my first meeting with Ray Charles and Shirley and Lee and Al Hibbler, and great people like that, Lloyd Price, who I performed with Dinah Washington at that time, because I was coming to the Apollo for like every weekend for like a month.
You had a great run of success through the 60s. Is there any one of those many classic successes that holds a special place for you?
Well, it's very hard to put your finger on one. There were so many different things that happened back in those days and in that era. They were all very exciting to me and all wonderful. It's all part of a new book about the story of my life that's coming out. And it just gets exciting from one chapter to the other.
And how did you find that experience, actually writing back over your life?
I'm sorry, say that again, please.
How did you find that experience writing your life story?
Well, we haven't finished.
Still going.
We're still going. The more we talk about it, the more it gets exciting, and every time they say this is the final chapter, and then we start something else, and say, oh my God, move that chapter around to this. So it's getting, reliving that is becoming very wonderful, and then getting a chance to talk to people who were in that time and in that era, or who remembers these things. It's just they're reminding me of things that I've forgotten about, and it gets very comical and very sad, very touching, very romantic. It's going to be a dramatic, exciting, romantic story and book.
Now, what about other people covering your songs? There's been some wonderful covers over the years. Any special ones there that hold a place for you?
I love it. I want everybody they possibly can that sings, dances, plays an instrument, does a movie, does a TV show, please do my songs. I love it. It's exciting to me. It's thrilling to me, from the Rolling Stones to Wilson Pickett to so many names, from the Blues Brothers to everybody that's ever done them. I'm grateful and very thankful.
How difficult was it for you to achieve crossover acceptance in the mainstream pop markets, away from the R&B charts?
Well, it was wonderful to have the thrill of being on the country charts for the first time, and being the first black artist to ever have a country record. And that was an exciting situation and an experience that I'll never forget, and one that we'll always remember and cherish.
Were things particularly competitive amongst the soul and R&B acts in the 60s?
I'm sorry, would you repeat that again, please?
Were things in any way competitive between the soul artists and the R&B artists during that time?
There was never any competition for me. I don't know about the other artists. I never had any problems. I did what I had to do, and if they didn't like it, we just made them happy anyway.
And the situation revolving around you leaving Atlantic, what were the circumstances there?
That's in the book.
That's in the book. Wait for that one.
You'll have to get the book for that one.
Okay, fair enough. You jumped through a few record labels throughout the 60s and early 70s. Was that disruptive at all to your career, not being able to settle on the one label during that time?
there was a lot of difficulties and a lot of different situations, and in the book it explains it so much, and it goes into detail. We were very blessed to leave Atlantic and then go to Amy Malabelle, which we had one record on Amy Malabelle, unfortunately, and that record was a huge success called Proud Mary. And after that, we were blessed to leave Amy Malabelle and come to MGM, which started a whole new career and a new dimension in my life.
How about your recent deal with Point Blank Records? How did that one come about?
I'm sorry, repeat that again?
Your recent recording deal with Point Blank Records, how did that one come about?
Point Blank was Point Blank. Excitingly, the greatest thing that happened with Point Blank was meeting Jim Fifield, Mr. and Mrs. Fifield, who I met at a concert in Aspirin. And that story is just phenomenal. We were performing there, and the Five Blind Boys came on before me, and they were singing, unbelievably, a song about rain. Didn't it rain? And all of a sudden, rain came from everywhere, and I'm to close the show, and I'm now closing the show in a thunderstorm, you know, with the blind boys laughing as they're leaving the stage. And it's time for me to go on. And we had to do the show in this rain, and everybody's at the umbrellas and raincoats and newspapers. And I said, this is really terrible. I can't believe it. But we did the show, and there was one couple who were in the front that were just getting down, having a good time, just dancing and hollering out the songs and singing the songs. And so when the show was over, I went back to the tent which we were in, and muddy and wet and everything. And this couple came back. And the guy says, we had such a wonderful time, you know, can we get an autograph? And I said, sure, come on in, you know, it's come out of the rain. And it was just incredible. The next thing I knew, he says, what label are you on? I said, right now I'm not on a label. He says, well, what do you want to be on? Tell me what you want to be. Capitol? Would you be on this? You want to be on Motown? I said, yeah, look, Virgin Records would be a good one. I've never been on a Virgin record in my life. And he laughed, and we laughed, and we thought nothing of it. And my son took their name and number, and we did the autograph and signed the T-shirt and all those other things. And about 2 weeks later, we got this call from this gentleman who said, why haven't you called me? And I says, okay, one moment, please. And I asked my son, who is this? He says, that's Mr. Fifield. And we found out that Mr. Fifield was the CEO of Virgin EMI, and he says, we want you on Point Blank. And that's how the Point Blank deal came about. And we did the definition of soul on Point Blank, and then right after that, Mr. Fifield resigned from the company, and of course, you know, when he resigned, a lot of things changed, and we're now on EMI. So we're very blessed to have our own label and also be on EMI now.
Good news. Now, I believe you have 21 children in all. Did any of them pursue music as well?
Yes, they are. I have several daughters who sing. Melanie, who's in North Carolina, Melanie and Dee Dee and Carolyn. They're singers, and Vicky's a singer in Philadelphia, and my son, Selassie, the baby son, is a singer. There's Solomon Burke Jr., who's a singer and performer, but they all have professions. They all have different professions. My youngest baby is a mortician, like his dad, and also my daughter Victoria is also a mortician, and my daughter Elizabeth, who's just graduated from UCLA, she's also a singer and performer and great writer. And if you look at some of our recent records, you'll see their names as writers and producers. And I'm very excited about that. But basically, they have their own professions. And Elizabeth is a linguist. She specializes in Chinese and French. And she's pursuing her career as a writer and a producer.
Now, you mentioned EMI now that you're with it. Are there any upcoming recording plans there?
There's a new album being released on EMI this week.
Oh, tremendous.
Not by Water, but Fire this time. It's a gospel album. and we have another record coming out, the Lord's will, by October, called The Commitment, and that's an R&B record. This is the last year that we'll be doing secular music, performing secular music on stage. This is the last time in my life, this year, 1999. After this year, we will not be performing any secular music at all, completely gospel, and going completely 199% with our church. So this is a very important year for me to speak with wonderful people like yourself, and to thank you and to thank the audience there for the many years, 4 decades of music that you've supported me and bought my records and listened to my music. And I thank you from the bottom of my heart. It's been so wonderful. I wish it could have been possible, or still could be possible, for me to come to Australia. But as you can see, we're running out of time.
Yeah.
And it's just wonderful being able to talk to you on the radio and I hope we're reaching some people out there in Australia. And I thank you so much. I hope the internet is alive and well, and email me, talk to me. I'll be more than glad to talk back with you and have great conversations with you.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much for your time, Solomon. Really do appreciate it, and thank you for many years of wonderful music.
It's been wonderful. Thank you, and I hope there's some shrimp on the barbie. Is that true?
We call them prawns.
Prawn.
Yeah.
That's good. That's even better, because that goes good in gumbo down here.
Oh, yes, I like the gumbo myself, actually. It's lovely.
Thank you so much for this interview. Say hello to everybody, and remember one thing: love is love, and peace is peace, and keep the peace and keep the love in your heart.
Thanks very much, Solomon. You take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.